Monday, April 7th, 2025. Um, and the View teased us by saying they were going to talk about the free falling stock market because of the orange felons tariffs and the massive protests that went on over the weekend on Saturday in what's been called the hands off movement. Um, and they didn't really talk about the second one. They kind of alluded to it in other parts, but they never really used it, had it as its own hot topic, which I thought was really weird. Because the thing to me about that whole event, and I went, and it didn't feel like anything was getting accomplished, but other than sort of solidarity and knowing that how many other people are as angry as you are, especially when the weather was bad, that people would come out and express themselves that way, and the vast array of sort of causes. That sort of felt like the big tent of it all. That it was, don't fuck with our Social Security and Medicaid. Don't stop with your immigration bullshit. Um, Stop terrorizing the LGBTQ community. Um, uh, your cabinet is incompetent. And and we never elected Elon Musk, and like it went on. Like the signs um, were almost all spelled correctly, and quite clever. But they ran that sort of gamut of these are all the things that are wrong with your regime. Um, and all I thought was, God damn, I hope politicians are paying attention. Um, and I thought it was really interesting when Cory Booker came on the show today and he said, change doesn't come from Washington, change comes to Washington. And that's sort of the point of it all, right? Is that we need to be putting pressure on our elected officials to stop this bullshit and to see so many protests, even in small towns in deep red states and regions, people out uh, protesting in the streets of their own towns, or going to their state capitals, or in some cases going all the way to DC or Atlanta or larger metropolitan areas. That we need to make sure that they understand, and specifically in those red areas, that you're gerrymandered to fuck. I get it, but hey, you're my representative, and I'm pissed. And it only takes a handful of Republicans in Congress to say no. The majorities are slim. So, I think that's important. And somebody asked Booker about momentum, and we got to move quick because in 13 days, Trump's at 90 days, and he may very well just um, you know try to declare martial law. So we've got a limited amount of time that we can do this stuff in the streets. And my favorite thing about these protests on Saturday, well, not my favorite, but one of the things that I loved is that nobody expected them to be as big as they were anywhere across the country. In any major city, in any small town, nobody was expecting them to be as big as they were. Um, in New York City, they only had like 40 cops. They just were going to keep it around Bryant Park, which is a park in the middle of the city, in the middle of Midtown, right behind the library. And there were so many people that spilled over. They weren't supposed to march down Fifth Avenue. That wasn't the plan. And it was the people, the protesters themselves, that stopped traffic on all of the side streets, stopped traffic, and then stopped the march to let the traffic through, and then stop the traffic. And so it's like, and nothing, no incidents, no violence. And I think part of that was all of those fucking muckraking, shit disturbing groups that usually show up at these things to make trouble. didn't think it was going to be a thing either. So it's a difficult thing to pull off again. Um, but we need to make sure that we're staying as loud and getting in the ear of our officials, local, state, and federal. But so I don't know, it's everything moves so slowly. I don't know that people's anger is going to do it. I think if they really try to fuck with Social Security, that's going to be a tipping point. Um, Especially when they fucked with everyone's retirement accounts already in the stock market. But honestly, I think it's this economic plan and this sort of free fall in the markets and uh, American corporations having no faith in any kind of long-term planning. And I can't remember which one of them said it. Um, but it is this whole thing with the tariffs and the stock market. The economy is based on faith, right? You have to believe that things are going to stay good or get better to be willing to invest in the future. So um, when it's this volatile and this shaky, no corporation is going to make the decision, well, I'm going to invest X millions of dollars in this future idea. They're not going to build a factory. They're not going to, because no one knows how long this is going to last. And if I'm, a year in and several million dollars into my investment to rehab this existing factory or change my operations to manufacture here or partially manufacture here, and then this all gets reversed. You've wasted all that money. So no one's going to take the chance to make the decision to make the investment until we're sure where things are going to end up in the future. And there's so much discussion about, oh, this is all just a bargaining chip, which is terrible. I think it was Anna Navarro who said this is terrible uh, business tactic, and it is, but this is how he always operates. He's a fucking bully. He just thinks he can strong arm everybody, but you can't strong arm the entire rest of the world, and then not pay them like you can, some sort of plumber who's working on a building you want to build. But so I mean, this is the thing that's distressing, and I feel like, you know, if we can get ourselves out of this quickly enough, the market will bounce back. But if he stays in here in in control and in power without any check on his sort of abilities, i.e., Congress saying, nope, you can't do that, and reversing the tariffs, reversing, like the Congress can write laws and make this shit illegal um, and roll this stuff back if they're willing to do it. And that's why the pressure on our politicians needs to be as heavy as it can be. Um, Excuse me, and it needs to be as quick as it can be. We can't wait until midterms if we're ever going to even have them. So that to me is like it feels like we're in a bit of limbo because we don't know where he's heading with this because he doesn't know. He doesn't. I think I may have said this last week, but apparently, if you put into ChatGPT, how do I calculate a tariff based on on a trade deficit? It's 100% lines up the tariffs he ended up putting on these countries, but and a lot of it doesn't make any sense. None of it's reciprocal. The countries didn't have tariffs on importing our goods. The reciprocal tariff thing is just a fucking lie. Um, it's based on trade deficit, but of course we're going to have trade deficit with if the only thing that you have that we need that we can't produce ourselves, like coffee, we can't grow coffee beans in the United States, um, but you need a shit ton of stuff from us. Of course, there's going to be a trade deficit, but like that's the world economy. And this whole idea, and I can't remember who brought it up. It might have been Sonny Austin about um, this Peter Navarro guy and his talking about tariffs and bringing the U.S. economy and manufacturing. Like you're talking about 100-year-old economy. That's just not how things work anymore. We don't build things the same way we used to build them. And having everyone do their part and piecing it all together actually has built a very robust global economy. And for Trump to stand on his plane and say, we will be the most dominant economic player in the world, we have been for decades. You're the one fucking it up. It's so stupid. And his stupid fucking cult just buys it. Like, oh, if tariffs are so bad, why did Joe Biden keep the ones from China? Because they figured out how to. uh, there was a tariff deal in China, and it was like they stopped buying our soy, and we stopped buying their steel. We found a replacement in Canada, and they found a replacement in like I don't know South America for all the things that we were buying. So it's like, well, there's no point in lifting the tariff because we figured it out, and that's the whole point of what's happening here is that the world is going to figure out how to do without us. Um, and then once we want in back into the global economy, there's not going to be we won't be needed. So um, this simpleton um, economic policy that came out of thin air that I didn't even seem like they knew what they were doing last week until they did it. Um, let's here's my cardboard. Somebody pointed out that the way the countries were listed was not alphabetical, nor in numeric order by size of tariff. They were just kind of random how the countries got put on there. Um, and the penguins. So anyway, my point of this all being is that nothing is going to grow, nothing is going to get better until we can find some sort of stability. And the only way we're going to find stability is if the Republicans find some backbone, or at least enough Republicans find backbone to stand up to this idiot and start actually reining in this this sort of regime of terror. Because you know, some of us want to retire someday, and things aren't looking good right now. So yeah, we need some sanity, and I feel like there was some great momentum last week, but man, you can't take your foot off the gas.